What is the longest amount of time that you have gone without sleep? Now what about without food or water? How long do you think you could survive? Well, it turns out some people have managed to survive much longer than anyone else. From people who cheated death once to others who have done so multiple times. Here are 20 people who have cheated death. Number 20. Tsutomu Yamaguchi. On August 6, 1945, the United States military dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. The bombing killed tens of thousands of people instantly. But there were many more who suffered horribly before passing away from their wounds. But one man named Tsutomu Yamaguchi wasn't one of them. He was slightly injured but survived the blast. So he went to work like normal. Then 3 days later, he was outside when the second atomic bomb exploded in Nagasaki. Yamaguchi had been in both cities when the bombs dropped. He survived both of them, although he did pass away in 2010. Number 19. Violet Jessop. Violet Jessop was a nurse who worked on 3 different British ships, the Titanic, the Olympic, and the Britannic. She served as a nurse on all 3 and managed to survive every disaster that befell them. However, she probably wishes she hadn't. With the Olympic, she survived a collision with a warship that left the ship damaged and 48 people dead. Then she was on the Titanic when it hit an iceberg, which led to the ship sinking and over 1,500 people losing their lives. Finally, she was aboard the Britannic when it hit a mine and sank, taking 30 lives with it. That means she survived 3 major disasters and lived to be 91 years old. Number 18. Hugh Glass. In 1823, trapper and explorer Hugh Glass was mauled by a grizzly bear while traveling through the Rocky Mountains. The mauling was brutal. His skull was cracked, his jaw was broken, and his leg was crushed. His colleagues left him for dead and tried to move on, but it turned out that Glass was very much alive. He refused to die, crawled 200 miles, and eventually made it to a river where he was found by some Native Americans. Number 17. Frane Selak. Croatia's Frane Selak has cheated death multiple times. It's almost as if death doesn't want him because it's just avoided him. He survived a plane crash, a train wreck, a bus crash, and 2 car explosions. You can only imagine how exhausted he must have become of death avoiding him. Back in 1966, he was on a plane that crashed, but he was the only survivor. Then, in 1970, he was on a train that derailed. Later, he was on a bus that crashed, and he was once again the only survivor. And then 2 cars exploded with him inside. Now, you might be wondering if he even drives anymore, but don't worry, he does. And he seems determined to keep trying to get death to take him. Number 16. Julian Kopke. In December of 1971, a Peruvian Airlines Flight 508 was flying over the South American jungle. It was carrying 91 passengers and 8 crew members from Lima to Pucallpa when it broke apart mid-flight. This caused 91 people to fall from the plane. Tragically, they were in the jungle for days before help could find them. Most of the passengers didn't make it, but one girl named Julianne Kopke did. She fell 10,000 feet but managed to survive. She stayed in the jungle for 11 days, eating fruit, drinking rainwater, and walking barefoot. Until she was found. Since the incident, she has traveled the world, writing books and giving talks about her experience. Number 15. The Anastasia Romanov imposters. After the Russian Revolution of 1917, the entire Russian royal family was massacred. Or were they? There have been many women who have come forward saying that they were the surviving sister of Alexei Romanov, the son of the last Russian Tsar. The most famous imposter was a woman named Anna Anderson, who came forward in 1920 claiming to be Anastasia. Many believed her since she had memories that matched up and looked similar to the missing princess. But DNA testing would later reveal that she was not related to the Romanovs at all. Other imposters include a woman named Margareta Eager, who also came forward in 1920. Then there was Barbara Worrell, who came forward in 1980. And finally, there was a woman named Helen Dembeling, who came forward in 2008. None of these women ended up being Anastasia, but maybe one of them really was. Number 14. Louis Zamperini. Louis Zamperini was an Olympic runner who competed in the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Unfortunately, his life took a dark turn when he enlisted in the United States Army Air Corps in World War II. He became a bombardier and was on a mission over the Pacific when the plane he was on crashed. This left him stranded at sea for 47 days. He and 2 other men survived on very little food and water, but eventually search parties found them. However, his troubles were not yet over. He was captured by the Japanese and sent to a POW camp, where he was tortured and beaten regularly. But he managed to survive this as well. Eventually, he was released and returned home. To celebrate, he went right into recovery and then started to rebuild his life. He wrote a book and appeared in a movie about his life. Number 13. Alexander Selkirk. In 1704, Alexander Selkirk was part of a British naval expedition in South America. During a trip to the coast of Chile, he noticed that his ship was infested with rats and disease. so he asked his captain to let him stay on the island instead of taking the ship. Captain Thomas Stradling granted his request and left him behind. Sadly, Strickland would later sail away without Selkirk, believing him to be dead. But Selkirk didn't give up. He survived on the island for 4 years, subsisting on berries, fish, and seals. He also built himself a shelter, a boat, and tools to hunt. He was eventually rescued by an English ship and returned to England. His story inspired Daniel Defoe to write the life and surprising adventures of Robinson Crusoe. Number 12. Aron Ralston. In 2003, Aron Ralston was exploring Utah's Blue John Canyon when he slipped and fell. The fall trapped his right arm under a boulder weighing 800 pounds. He used every bit of strength he had left to carve a 4-inch wide hole in the boulder, allowing him to free his arm. But unfortunately, his knife was too dull to cut through the bone. So he used his dull pocket knife and carved off his arm. Once free, he escaped the canyon and hiked 8 miles to a dirt road where he flagged down a passing motorist. He was later hospitalized and eventually recovered from the ordeal. Number 11. Vesna Vulovic. In January of 1972, Vesna Vulovic was a flight attendant on Jot Airways Flight 367. She was serving coffee and tea when the plane suddenly exploded, 33,000 feet above the ground. This caused the plane to go into a tailspin. The plane flew through clouds and rain before crashing into a mountain in Yugoslavia. Every single person on board passed away except for Vulovic. She suffered serious injuries, including a broken leg and nose, but managed to survive. She was found on the side of a mountain crying and wearing nothing but her seat. She remained in the hospital for 16 months, but she did make a full recovery. Number 10. Maurice Wilson. Maurice Wilson was a British mountaineer who was determined to reach the top of Mount Everest. He attempted to scale the mountain in 1924, but he didn't follow protocol and went alone. He did not tell anyone that he was leaving and set off on a route that no one had ever taken before. Eventually, he climbed high enough to use his telescope to scan the area for potential campsites. But sadly, he never returned from his expedition. An inquiry was launched to find him, but no trace of him was ever found. It's believed that he may have been blown off the mountain in a storm, but no one knows for sure. Number 9. Annette Herfkens. In 1992, a Vietnam Airlines plane was flying from Ho Chi Minh City to Gia Rai when it crashed. The plane was supposed to land at 5:35 p.m., but by 9 p.m. it was still in the air. At 9:30 p.m., the pilots reported engine failure and requested to make an emergency landing. But before they could do so, the plane burst into flames and crashed. Amazingly, one woman named Annette Herfkens survived the crash. She was the only survivor of the crash, but she was found 8 days later, all alone in the jungle. She had sustained burns on 80% of her body, but remarkably, she did survive. Number 8. Togo, the sled dog. In 1925, an outbreak of the disease, diphtheria, struck the town of Nome, Alaska. There was only one way to save the town: serum that could combat the disease. The problem was the nearest supply of serum was 674 miles away. The serum had to be transported quickly, but there were no roads connecting the towns. The serum had to be delivered by dog sled. Togo and his team of dogs were tasked with transporting the serum. They had to cross frozen rivers and travel through blizzards. But Togo did not care. He struggled through the journey and arrived at his destination in just 5 days. Number 7. John McCain. In 1967, John McCain was a commander in the United States Navy. When his plane was shot down over North Vietnam, he managed to eject safely and parachute into the ocean, where he was rescued by a local fisherman. He was taken to a prison camp in Hanoi, where he was tortured and beaten regularly, but he never gave up any intelligence to his captors. He was eventually released in 1973 and went on to serve in the U.S. Senate until his death in 2018. Number 6. Douglas Mawson. In 1911, Douglas Mawson became the first person to reach the geographic center of the Antarctic continent. But his adventures didn't end there. In 1912, he set out on another expedition with his 2 companions, Xavier Mertz and Belgrave Edward Ninnis. They had planned to travel to Cape Adare, but storms and pack ice forced them to return. As they returned, Mertz and Ninnis died due to complications from frostbite. Their bodies were eventually lost in the crevasses of the ice sheet. Mawson survived the journey, but he had developed severe frostbite and had lost nearly all of his toes. This didn't stop him though. He continued his explorations of Antarctica and spent most of his life traveling and lecturing about his expeditions. Number 5. Arrid Anderson. Arrid Anderson has cheated death more times than most people do in a lifetime. In 1987, he was the captain of the yacht Sojeni when it sank during a voyage from the Caribbean to Florida. The accident left him paralyzed from the chest down, but he was not deterred. He continued to enjoy the water by scuba diving and boating. Sadly, in 1998, he was crushed by a wave while sailing and broke his neck. He broke 4 vertebrae, but he still survived. He didn't let this slow him down either. He still goes sailing every weekend, although he now has someone to drive him to the boat. Number 4. Joe Simpson. In 1985, Joe Simpson and his friend Simon Yates were climbing Ciula Grande in the Andes Mountains. The climb was difficult, but they managed to scale the peak. On their way down, Simpson slipped and hung from the mountain by his fingertips. Yates believed Simpson was dead and cut him loose, but somehow, Simpson managed to crawl back up the mountain. Miraculously, he survived the fall and was able to walk the rest of the way down the mountain. His adventure was later adapted into a movie called Touching the Void. Number 3. Roy Sullivan. Between 1942 and 1977, Roy Sullivan was struck by lightning 7 times and survived every time. He was a park ranger at Shenandoah National Park when he was first struck. He was working at a fire tower when lightning struck the metal tower, causing electricity to flow through his body. He was knocked unconscious, but he made a full recovery. Incredibly, he was struck by lightning 6 more times, but he survived each one. After the 4th strike, he decided to leave the park, but he was struck 3 more times while driving. He was even struck once while seeking shelter in a cave. Number 2. Annie Edson Taylor. In 1916, Annie Edson Taylor decided to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel. She was a 63-year-old schoolteacher who wanted to prove that it could be done. She designed a wooden watertight barrel and practiced going down smaller waterfalls. On October 16th, she was placed in the barrel and pushed off the side of the falls. The barrel landed in the water below the falls. It had hit the water at 94 miles per hour. Although the barrel was damaged, Taylor was okay. Number 1. Bethany Hamilton. On October 2003, Bethany Hamilton was surfing at Tunnels Beach in Hawaii when a 14-foot tiger shark attacked her. The shark bit off her entire arm, but amazingly, she survived the attack. She managed to paddle herself back to shore, but her entire left arm was gone. She was rushed to the hospital, but her injuries were unstable. She did survive, but she had lost her entire arm. Doctors reattached her arm, but the reattachment failed. She would later receive a prosthetic arm, but she was determined to live her life normally. She learned to surf again and even became a professional surfer. Which of these stories was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to stay tuned for more videos like these. Thanks for watching.